I think we can get started in just a minute here as folks are coming in. Um, I'm Jackie Filson. I'm the head of communications for the Student Borrower Protection Center. We're here today to discuss the destructive policies outlined in Project 2025 that threaten to throw millions of Americans, in particular public service workers with student loans, deeper into debt. Our plan today is to unveil new data showing how Project 2025 would harm public service workers with student debt in every state in the country. Before we kick off, I'm just going to quickly run through our agenda and explain the press Q&A process. Also, please note that this event will be recorded. I think it's already started, and closed captioning is available. You just have to click the show captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. So to start us off, we'll hear quick remarks from Mike Pierce, the Student Borrower Protection Center's executive director and a bona fide expert on the student loan system and crisis. After that, we'll turn it over to Randy Weingarten, president of the AFT. Randy is an invaluable advocate for educators and public service workers, and her dedication and honestly sheer moxie has not just helped ensure PSLF was living up to its promise, but kept so many of us energized in this work. Next, we'll hear from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who is not just a relentless champion for student loan borrowers in the House, but also co-founder of the Stop Project 2025 task force. Her leadership has been instrumental in our fight to protect borrowers, and we're very excited to hear from her today about the task force's work and more. Then last but not least, we'll hear from Catherine, a biotech worker who got super involved in her union and is now statewide president and biology technician in Camarillo, California for California State University employees of SEIU. Catherine relied on PSLF herself and will shed light on the importance of that relief. And we're so grateful she's here today and willing to share her story with us. Once our speakers conclude, I'll open it up for questions from the press, which can be put into the chat or asked verbally, and I'll run through how that'll actually work when we get there. If you experience any technical difficulties during the event, please just chat the hosts for assistance and they'll do their best to help you out. Thanks again for joining today. And now I will pass it over to Mike to get us started.
Thank you so much, Jackie. As Jackie mentioned, my name is Mike Pierce, and I'm the Executive Director of the Student Borrower Protection Center. We're thrilled to be joined by an incredible lineup of speakers who've been leading the fight to protect borrowers and sound the alarm about the risks that Project 2025 poses for the economy and for working people across the country. As Jackie mentioned, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to walk through the new analysis that we put together, documenting the economic consequences of Project 2025 on public service workers with student debt. I also wanted to note that my fantastic colleague, Aisa Controla-Banez, Policy Director at SBPC, had the opportunity to warn lawmakers about these risks at a Senate Banking Committee hearing 2 weeks ago. If you've not seen her testimony, I'd strongly encourage you to take a look at that as well. Today, we're releasing a first-of-its-kind analysis on the effects of one specific piece of Project 2025, the proposal to eliminate the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Our analysis shows that more than 3.6 million teachers, healthcare workers, members of the military, and others will be forced to pay more than $250 billion in additional student loan debt over the course of the next decade. I want to repeat this. If Project 2025 is implemented and PSLF is ended, the existing cohort of public service workers will owe an additional $250 billion in student loan debt. The PSLF program was created in 2007 in a bipartisan act of Congress signed into law by President George W. Bush. This law promised to cancel debts in full for all Americans working in public service following a decade of service and monthly student loan payments. These are borrowers who have paid their bills. The Biden-Harris administration took this promise seriously, implementing a series of executive actions that delivered student debt relief for nearly 1 million public service workers nationwide. Rather than build on the Biden-Harris administration's historic success, the framers of Project 2025 want to punish millions of public service workers who've already taken steps to qualify for PSLF. Nationwide, this rollback will affect millions of teachers, healthcare workers, service members, and others. Our analysis also projects the effects of this rollback on public service workers in each state. For example, in Pennsylvania, more than 159,000 people who are currently working in public service will owe $10 billion in additional student debt, an average debt burden of more than $68,000. In Georgia, more than 145,000 people who are currently working in public service will owe more than $12 billion in additional debt, an average burden of more than $85,000. And in Michigan, nearly 130,000 people who are currently working in public service will owe more than $8 billion in additional debt, an average debt burden of more than $67,000. Our analysis only estimates the effects of this heinous policy rollback on the existing pipeline of public service workers who have taken steps to qualify for PSLF. We estimate that this projection is under-inclusive for two reasons. First, there are millions of additional public service workers who've not yet taken action to signal their intent to pursue PSLF. A 2017 analysis by the CFPB estimated that fully 1 in 4 US workers are employed by a qualified public service employer, and if they have a federal student loan, could be eligible for PSLF. Second, millions of future public service workers are enrolled in school now or are working in other fields contemplating a change in profession. Events like Hurricane Helene often serve as a call to action for civic-minded Americans who choose a career in public service. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was created to ensure that student debt is not an economic barrier to these careers, and for nearly 2 decades has helped millions of people serve our country and in our communities. This analysis, including a state-by-state map of the harm that would be caused by Project 2025, is now available on protectborrowers.org, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have about this analysis. I'm happy to hand the call now back to my colleague, Jackie Filson, who I think is going to introduce our next speaker.
Yes, thank you, Mike. For those of us not so fluent in numbers, that was incredibly helpful. The data really hammer home how serious the threat of Project 2025 is, and the architects of the plan are truly orchestrating a crisis that would erase all the progress we've made. So with that, I would like to hand it off to the incredible President Randy Weingarten.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, and thank you for letting me actually do my part right now, since we are celebrating the holidays on the other coast, the Jewish holidays, and I am in transit right now, and I really wanted to do this press conference for all the reasons that Mike just said. And I also want to pay a lot of homage to Representative Presley, who has taken this issue on within the Congress and has made sure that the American people actually understand what is starting to happen and what the GOP playbook is if Trump and Vance get elected in November. And it is simply, as Mike just said, it is basically taking away one of the existing anchors, foundations, engines of opportunity. When you have, in a bipartisan way, in the turn of this century, a President Bush, a Senator Clinton, a Senator Kennedy, basically saying, we need people to work in the public service, whether they are nurses, whether they are teachers, whether they are in the armed services, whether they are firefighters. We need a public service. Look at what FEMA is doing right now in terms of the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Look at what happens every time there is an emergency in terms of COVID. Every time there's an emergency, it's public employees that are the first line of defense. Every time we are trying to think about how we educate our children, it's public school teachers, it's nurses. Say, governments may not be able to pay everybody what they're worth, and we fight. Public workers don't have unsustainable student debt in order to get the degrees they need to do the work they're doing. That's what public service loan forgiveness was about. It was saying, if you stay in this work for 10 years, then we're gonna say you get the rest of your debt forgiven. So if you pay your debt for 10 years and stay in this work past that, we're gonna say you get the rest of it forgiven. That's what public service loan forgiveness was and is. And the first 2010, Betsy DeVos, not only did they do nothing, they made it harder. They made sure that this law wouldn't be implemented well. Less than 2% of people who were eligible were able to actually get their loans forgiven. And what did President Biden do? And Vice President Harris? They turned that around. Now, they did it because of groups like us who sued Navient, who sued DeVos, groups like SBPC, legislators like Representative Presley. But what has happened as a result is nearly 1 million people got the promise that was made in a bipartisan way because of the need of having public service workers. Project 2025 wants to get rid of that. And underlying their wanting to get rid of that is their antipathy to public service, as well as their antipathy to people who are be able to have a future that they deserve. Look at everything else they do to try to stop young people from going to college without unsustainable student debt. The kinds of lawsuits that they brought each and every time President Biden and Vice President Harris, Representative Presley, and Senator Warren, and us, you, have tried to do to say the American dream is within your grasp. We're going to make sure that there's access and it's affordable. This part of Project 2025 is a twofer, is a dystopian twofer. Number one, it says we don't want public service. And number two, it says that young people who are not rich, who are not born with a silver spoon in their mouth, should not have that opportunity that we believe in. And that's why I'm so grateful for this new analysis, because it makes it clear as day what the import, what the effect of this dystopian, evil attempt by Project 2025 to do in terms of eviscerating the public service and trying to eliminate the opportunity that people who are not rich try to do, to go to college and to get a decent job and to raise a family and to buy a house, not be burdened by student debt, unsustainable student debt. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Weingarten, for making time for us. You truly never fail to deliver the energy we need. Making sure public service workers have financial stability seems like it should be a given for all of the reasons you laid out. And not only that, it's something we promised, and it's why we're all here and doing the work we're doing to try to protect that promise. So thank you again. Now I am very thrilled and honored to hand it over to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley to speak more about the dangers of Project 2025 and the work she's doing with the task force.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you all for joining us today. And as I so often say about Randy, I would follow her anywhere and certainly into any battle or any fight. Grateful for her leadership and strength of conviction. It's an honor to stand alongside all of you, our dedicated public servants, the Student Borrower Protection Center, AFT, borrowers and advocates, to further highlight the devastating impact that Project 2025 would have for millions of public servants and their families. I think it's important always to make that point when we talk about borrowers, when we talk about educators. People, often think that they're sort of independent contractors. Borrowers, educators belong to families, and those families are a part of communities. And so there's a residual impact felt by everyone. I am proud to be an original co-founder of the House Stop Project 2025 Task Force alongside Congressman Jared Huffman. And we are being very intentional about leveraging every tool at our disposal, from the power of our pen as lawmakers to the power of our platform, to the power of convening through committee, to shine a light, because sunlight is the best disinfectant, on every aspect of Project 2025, and to give the public as clear a picture as possible of just how harmful Project 2025 is. Project 2025, yes, it is a blueprint for a far right-wing manifesto that we have to do everything possible to make sure it does not become manifest. But it is, in simpler terms, it's a playbook. I have learned in my 6 years in Congress that these extremist Republicans do not make threats, they make promises. So Project 2025 is a playbook. It is a playbook that means harm to every person that calls this country home. It is wholesale policy violence. But today, again, thanks to our partners at SBPC, we now have damning new data that shows how harmful it would be for public service workers. So it gives us that sort of disaggregate data to tell an even more detailed picture about the harm that would be caused very precisely to public service workers. To put it bluntly, Project 2025's proposal to eliminate public service loan forgiveness is cruel. It's anti-worker, and it would deny this life-saving relief to millions of people who have given so much to our country. And it's not just an attack on a federal program. It's an attack on the lives and livelihoods of those who strengthen our communities and build up our nation. Public service loan forgiveness was designed to provide relief to those who've dedicated their lives to public service, our educators, our nurses, our healthcare workers, service members, first responders, and more. Our public service workers make many sacrifices to stay in their field, answering what I think is a higher and a very deep calling. And Project 2025 seeks to gut this program that is essential to retaining dedicated people. Now, if enacted, this plan, this playbook would strip away a critical pathway to student debt relief for approximately 3.6 million public service workers and saddle them with over $250 billion in additional student loan debt. That's $250 billion in debt on the backs of those who have already sacrificed so much for so many. In my home state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, roughly 78,000 public service workers would lose out on more than $5 billion in debt relief. These are the people who show up day in and day out, who certainly did that tenfold during the pandemic, whether it's the educator in the classroom teaching our babies, the nurse caring for us at our bedside, or the first responder running towards danger. These workers are the backbones of our communities, and they deserve a government that sees them, that centers them, that invests in them. But Project 2025 is telling them that their contributions don't matter. It is as heartless as it is wrong. And again, as I've learned with these extremist Republicans, the cruelty is the point, seems to be the only point. There are so many stories and lived experiences that I carry with me in this fight, in this work, specific to student debt and the public service loan forgiveness program. And I'm thinking specifically in this moment about Priscilla Valentine, a first-generation American, a proud union educator with Boston Public Schools and the Boston Teachers Union. And my guest, it was my honor, my guest at President Biden's State of the Union address this year. Now, Priscilla, she took out loans to pursue her goal of becoming a teacher. But like so many borrowers, she was saddled with debt that impacted her lives, her credit score and her life for years, and that of her family. As a last hope, Priscilla applied for public service loan forgiveness and ultimately had her entire student loan balance of over $117,000 wiped out. In her words, PSLF opened up my family's world to a life that I could have only dreamed of a year ago. I'm now able to save for my children to be able to go to college. I'm building good credit so my husband and I can refinance our mortgage. PSLF has given people like Priscilla a pathway to financial stability and allowed them to continue serving our communities. When we talk about economic justice, when we talk about economic freedom, it's the freedom that it's a peace of mind that you and yours are going to be okay. And since the Biden-Harris administration fixed the program in 2021, we've seen over $69 billion in student debt canceled for nearly 1 million public service workers nationwide. This is how government is supposed to work. We're supposed to be responsive to the struggles and to the aspirations of everyone who calls this country home. But perhaps most importantly, in addition to this critical relief, public service loan forgiveness program has given borrowers hope. Under Project 2025, Priscilla and millions of others would be denied that hope, would be denied that relief. So stopping Project 2025 is as much about protecting our fundamental freedoms and our democracy as it is about advancing workers' justice and economic justice and gender justice and racial justice. So thank you again to everyone for joining us today, and thank you to our partners for this important work. Together, we are going to do everything in our power to ensure that this far right-wing manifesto does not become manifest. And we're going to keep pushing to ensure that every last borrower receives a student loan, a student debt relief that they demand and that they deserve.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Your words and stories are so powerful and really help ground what's that Project 20. Your leadership is invaluable to protect borrowers. Now to share more about this dangerous threat is Catherine, SEIU President from Camarillo, California. Mike's yours, Catherine.
Thank you. And I'm so excited to have been invited to this because I am a recipient of this program and how it benefited me. You know, when you go to school, education, they say, helps create a powerful workforce. And so I always understood I wanted to go and get a higher degree and get into the workforce. And then when I got into higher education, and I went to financial aid as a student assistant, so I knew exactly about loans and how they work and pay them back. And I heard about this program. I knew I wanted to take a job in higher education because I love working with faculty and students. And so I was okay with taking the loans because I said, oh, as soon as I'm done, I'll get into the. They don't tell you though, is like I took out 40,000 in loans and you're in public service. So then you're like, oh wait, I have to do income driven plans back with the loans. So by the time you are paying this back, my loan grew to over $100,000 that I would have to owe. And so you go into the program and you have that hope and faith. I plan to make it my career, so I'm okay, you know, with spending the time of making my payments on time and everything. But the program before the Biden administration got a hold of it was a very tough program to get through. There's times when they lose your paperwork. There was one time I happened to live in Camarillo where we're prone to fires in California. And they said for 1 month, you don't have to pay because I had to flee a fire. And I was like, great, but I was on auto payment for the loan. And they actually kicked me out of the program for making a payment. And then when they do that, when you get kicked out of the program, you have to start over. So even though you maybe 5-10 years in, they say, oops, no, you start over. It's very, very frustrating. People formed like groups to try and help each other get through the process. But when the Biden administration came in, it was just a breath of fresh air. You know, this just whole tension debt was he said, we're going to look at everything you've paid, see if it counts. And I knew I'd been 12 years in and I still owed. And after they did off, and they actually paid me money back because they said you did overpay because you were debt free a couple of years ago. So I am beyond grateful. My coworkers who actually also, because we're in education, took out loans, they were forgiven. The things that it does is it lifts this tension and stress off of you of, okay, my dad's from Louisiana. When he retired, he moved back there. I could only see him once a year. Now I can see him when I need to. My friends with kids, they can now put them in programs that they couldn't afford before because it's, you got to pay this or it ruins your credit. You just always short in cash. You always had to pick and choose what you wanted to do. And now there's just this relief that I'm not forced to pick this one thing. I can make that choice now because of this debt being gone. And for the generation behind me, more and more students are going to be in loan debt, you know, just due to inflation, everything, the cost of doing everything has gone up. And so my student assistants that I work with have now taken out loans to get through. And to have this program there for them to be able to take a part of it in whatever career they decide to do, especially if they go into public service, it it's such a relief to have it. And so to hear that a group wants to take it away because you just don't think people deserve the right or have the right to go to get a higher degree or education or learn a trade, and they need this loan to do it. It's just completely selfish, wrong, and shows privilege. And I'm just grateful for the administration, Biden administration, and Representative Presley for continuing to keep up this fight to keep this program around. So not only does it benefit my fellow coworkers who may still be paying on it, but then the generation behind me that will need it when they choose to say, yes, I want to be a teacher. Yes, I want to go into public service. I want to work as a staff member at a, elementary schools, colleges. And I want to be able to do it and not have to struggle every day because I decided to take out a loan and do this. So I am beyond grateful to everyone who supported this program and keeps supporting this program, keeping up the good fight to keep this program around because, like I said, I benefited so much from it, and I don't have to stress and worry now about my credit or not being able to visit family and friends because it's either pay the debt or take a credit hit or miss a bill or anything else. So thank you again for everything that.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's really easy to get lost in the numbers and data, but experiences like yours, stories like yours really help remind us that there are real people and real communities behind those numbers. And that's really why we're all here doing this work. So with that, I'll just pause for a quick second for us to stop the recording, and then we will open it up